Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Almost Martha. And today I'm going to be making something very special. I don't know if you watched my video about being in Paris, but I took a cooking class at the Fernandez School in Paris. It's right across from the Galeries Lafayette. It's affiliated with that. That's where I got my beautiful apron. This is what I made. We made the Provencal tart. It was really great, really delicious, and that is what I'm going to try to make for you today. I am doing a little conversion because their recipe is all in grams, so I do have a scale. I'm going to be sort of converting that for you. And when we made these tarts in Paris, we had little individual servings. So we had these 6 cylinders that we used to make each individual tart. But I don't think that's what I want to do today, because they did say you can make one big tart. And I think most of you, including myself, do not want to go out and buy the little 6 stainless rings in order to make those individual tarts. So I thought we would try to make it using something that you already have on hand, which would be a springform pan that you make your cheesecake in. So it'll be a little bit of an experiment that way, but it was really fun to make. There's several steps, but they're all very easy. So I'm going to go through them with you today. So, okay, here we go. Step 1 is the crust, and it is a thyme Parmesan short crust. And they suggested making it in a blender, but I think your food processor is going to work just fine, because you're also going to have to be incorporating cold butter. So I think that's what we'll use. So to start with, I have 200 grams of flour, which comes out to be about a cup and a half of flour. I have almost a half cup of Parmesan cheese, but it's really about 50 grams of Parmesan cheese. If you don't use a scale, that's something I know ad nauseum you hear, people that bake and stuff and say, you got to get a scale, you got to get a scale. But they really do make things like this very handy, and they also make your measurements perfect, right? Because you put your measuring cup on it, it will weigh the measuring cup, and then you press a button and then it will just weigh the ingredients that go in. So it makes it really super easy, super, super easy. So in a large bowl, you combine our 200 grams of flour. We have our Parmesan cheese. And it said 2 sprigs of thyme. I went out to my little garden and I got what thyme that I could, and then I chopped it. So you're not going to get big hunks of thyme in it, but you should get just enough, just enough. And then we have our butter. So for our butter, we're going to take it and we're going to slice it into chunks and just sort of put it right into the bowl, at least partially, right? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just start pulsing this butter in here a little bit. And then I can begin to add a little more butter. Pulsing a little bit each time. You don't want to work the butter too much, because you really, it's cold. You want it to stay kind of cold. Now I've got the last of the butter. So this called for 125 grams of butter, which is about 1 stick, and I used unsalted butter because of the Parmesan in there. Parmesan is going to add your salt for you. Okay, so you want it to start to look crumbly. This is starting to look crumbly. That means that butter is getting incorporated. Okay, that looks really good. So the last thing I'm going to do to the crust is I'm going to add an egg. And I am loath just to tap it and put that egg right in there, because you never know. Sometimes eggs have a thick shell, sometimes they have a thin shell. You can get eggshell right in there, and you really don't want that. Okay, all looks good. All looks good. I'm going to put it right in. Okay, and now added that extra moisture, so now you see it's really starting to form a dough. And there it is. There it is. So quick and easy, right? But here's the tip that Chef Elise gave me while we were there, and they said, when you chill dough, make sure you roll it out first. How many of us have seen roll it into a ball and put it into your refrigerator and chill it for 30 minutes, or put it in the freezer, and then the next thing you have to do is really work that ball to get it to roll out to be anything? And she said, no, no. Just go ahead and roll it out first, and then you can chill your dough, which makes an enormous amount of sense. Then the other thing she said, which I thought was really great, was, a lot of times you'll also see recipes that say roll onto a floured surface. Well, when you do that, it really changes the composition of your dough, right? You're adding all this flour to it, which wasn't in the recipe. So she said what she would suggest is to roll your dough out right on the parchment paper, and then keep it on the parchment paper. That way you're not adding flour, and your dough is going to stay exactly as intended. Right? I'm going to find my rolling pin, and I'm going to start rolling this dough out. And you know what? It was a perfect amount of time. It looks great. So this is going to be really good. Now, this recipe, she also said, this recipe makes more dough than you are going to need for your tart. Good to know. Because the remaining dough, what we did was go ahead and bake it, and then we sliced it up into crackers. And some of the crackers we crumbled over the top of the tart, across the little salad. You also can make some crackers that you can serve alongside a little glass of wine before you have your tart. You can sprinkle it with some Parmesan and some flake sea salt, and boy, you've got a really nice little extra. So you want this to, just we're getting it to a crust-like, not only shape, but thickness. And if you saw my Paris video, I was the one that was selected to roll everything out. So I had lots of video of me just rolling along. And you can also shape it. So if you're looking for, something if you're trying to use this dough for something else, you need a rectangle, you need a square, you can just go in and cut it and move it around to get it to the shape that you need it. She said this dough is also a favorite of hers to make a quiche. And the dough that I used to make a quiche Lorraine, there was certainly no egg in it. But she said this is a really great dough for everything. It's incredibly versatile, and it's really sort of hard to mess up. So this is a good dough to have in your repertoire. Okay, I think I'm about there. She also said, and I like this, she said, I hear in America you have really big freezers. So that's good. You can roll this dough out, and you can put it in your freezer for 5 or 10 minutes, and then your dough is going to be good and it's going to be ready to cook. So we do have really big freezers and really big refrigerators too, but I didn't say anything. Yes, actually, Elise, I have 2 freezers. Just can't get enough of that frozen stuff. She was great, though. Chef Elise was really, really great. This was one of her last classes for folks like me, and then she was going to go teach in the professional school. So she was really good at what she did. super nice and helpful. It was just a lovely experience. So if any of you are going to travel to Paris, I highly recommend taking one of these cooking classes. They also have some where you can make macaroons, or they have different things all throughout the year that you can sign up to make. And the next time I go, I'm going to go right back and do this again because I really did learn a lot. So just different techniques, different things to do it. Okay, so here I am. See, I'm totally manipulating the dough, getting it into the real shape that I want. And I think we're good. So now I'm going to do just as she suggested. And I'm going to take my dough and I'm going to lay it in my freezer. Now we're going to work on some of the ingredients in our tart. And we're going to start with some eggplant. So I am going to be very careful here because I want to slice this eggplant sort of down the center, right? So it's a little different than I would normally slice an eggplant. And I don't necessarily want to cut that cap off. I want to keep that cap there. So, okay, now I have 2 eggplant halves. I'm going to do this here too. I'm just going to remove the outer leaf stuff as best I can. Anyway, keep the rest. And now I'm just going to slice this baby in half. Okay. So now we're going to score this eggplant. And we want you to really don't get all the way down to the actual skin. You don't want to pierce the skin, but you definitely want to go low. Okay. And then we're going to do it the other way. So we're just sort of making these crisscross cuts in the eggplant as deep as you feel you can go without cutting the skin. Okay, great. That's one. So they're a big fan of parchment paper. So I've got, luckily, so am I. So I've always got parchment paper on hand. Okay. So now I have my eggplants on my tray, and I am liberally going to put olive oil. You can get some on the skin as well. Even though we're not going to do anything with the skin, you know, all we're gonna worry about is the inside. So she was very liberal with that olive oil. Olive oil is good for you. Remember that. It's a good thing, right? Okay. So now I am gonna salt my eggplant just a little bit. Okay. Now I'm gonna put this in the oven and let these babies bake. Okay, so Elise showed us some very fancy ways to cut onions. And yeah, I really couldn't do it. My knife wasn't sharp enough. Honestly, it really was not sharp enough. It really wasn't. But I just chopped onions the best way I could chop onions. So she said about, a couple of yellow onions. Make sure they're yellow onions. So I chopped up a couple. I've got about 2 cups of onions here, and we're gonna caramelize these onions in butter on the stove. So as we cook these onions, you don't want them to get too brown, because what you're really looking for is that caramelization, right? So we'll work on that. Onions right in the saucepan with a half stick of butter. And here I used a combination of salted and unsalted, because I didn't put any salt in there yet. So I'm going to coat the onions with the butter, and then we're going to let them cook down. So I have the heat a little high at the moment, And I'm just gonna turn it down because we don't want the onions to really brown. We want them just to cook down and caramelize. So I'll have to just keep an eye on, what's going on over here. Now, another step we're gonna take is we're gonna make something called she called it a green oil, but it was really basil oil. And it's really kind of easy to make. I've got a pan of water getting to a boil on the stove. I have some fresh basil that I'm going to throw into it. And we're going to actually, whoops, I just lost spread. We're going to blanch this basil for about 30 seconds. So my water is boiling. My water is boiling. Come on, Laura. Get it all as best you can. We're going to throw it in the pot. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're at that mark. Really, we're just sort of blanching the basil. We are going to plunge it into ice water because we want it to completely stop this cooking process. And that's it. Turn this water off. Don't need that anymore. And now we have our basil that's been blanched. It's been put into ice water, and now we can go to the next step. I have my cooked basil here, and I'm just trying to squeeze it to get all the water out as best I can, because we're going to make oil out of this, right? So you really don't want it to have a lot of water in it. So I'm just squeezing here. It looks like a wad of cooked spinach at this point, but it's basil. Okay, and I'm going to put it in the bottom of my blender. And then I'm going to add the special ingredient of olive oil. And then we're going to whip it up. You can tell that the oil is turning a different color. So here we go. Okay, well, we have green. We have green. Very happy to see that. So the next step is just to strain this oil. So get out a nice little strainer, and we're just going to pour everything in here, right in here. And look at that. Look at that. Some of the basil did not, totally fold in, and that's to be expected. That's why we're straining it. I have a feeling I'm making a slightly smaller batch of it. If it was a little bigger, the blender might have worked a little better. So there's that. Okay. My onions are cooking. They're almost done. The eggplant is almost done. I've already checked that. So now it's time to really deal with our dough. So I have the bottom of the springform pan here, and I'm just going to use that as a guide, and I'm gonna cut around. Okay, I'm gonna cut around from that. So this will eventually go in my springform pan, but I'm not gonna bake it in the springform pan because I really don't have to. It might be hard to lift as well. Or should I? I don't know. What do you think? What should I do? All right. It's coming up pretty easily. Lots of butter here. So I'm just going to put it right in my pan. I know it's going to shrink a little bit because it always does. So I think to be on the safe side, I'm just going to bake it all on its own. So we're going to bake it on the parchment paper, but we're going to play with this dough just a little bit too. So parchment paper, got this. Why not? Stick it right on the round, and then I'm going to bake it until it's done. And I still have lots of parchment paper, so I'm just going to play with this just a little bit, kind of make it one big piece again. Okay, perfect. And now I'm going to score it a little bit, and we're going to make some crackers. So we're just going to take our knife and we're just going to score this dough just a little bit. Just little tasty crackers. We're going to have some crumbles too, so don't worry. So score this dough, and we're just going to bake it as is right on this sheet. Okay, have some extra Parmesan. So I'm going to sprinkle top of this with some Parmesan. If you want to add anything else, you can do that too. This would be some nice, there's already Parmesan in the dough, so just a little more Parmesan on top. You can add cracked black pepper. You can add some, sea salt to anything that you think is going to make it nice and tasty. Have some sea salt flakes that might be kind of nice, but I don't want to make it too salty either. Just little sparse, little sea flakes. Okay, and then we're going to throw this in the oven too. And now we're going to work on a finishing touch. So I need a zucchini, and I tried not to get gigantic zucchinis, so I got them, I would say about medium size, and I tried to also find tomatoes that were of a similar size, but that was really kind of hard to do. But I did the best I could. So I'm going to try out this mandolin. This is sort of a new mandolin. Let me wash this real quick. And let's see what our size is like. Oh, that's really lovely. Okay, this is slightly thicker than we need. Try it again. A little better. A little more. I love zucchini. It's very, it's always great to add in salads and stuff because it's really sort of nutty. And trying to get a label off here, which is really annoying. Cut that maybe off. Okay. Really nutty. It's good in salads and all that good stuff. These need to be thin. Okay, so now we're talking. They need to be a little pliable. So I'm going to use this mandolin to really. So these came with the mandolin, but you can buy them in like a Williams-Sonoma or anywhere, like a kitchen place, and it just will protect your hands. We've all done it, right? I'll left a finger slice on there, and you can sort of just get down a little lower. Okay, so here are my zucchini slices, which are great. If I need more, I can always get more. Now I'm going to try. I haven't tried this on a tomato. I want to see how this works. Oh, I love it. I love it. Chef Elise, this totally would have solved my not sharp knife problem, right? Because now I've got these beautiful, nice, thin slices of tomato, exactly what we need. Because what I'm really working on here is the garnish. So now we're going to take our zucchini rounds. I'm going to put them in a bowl. And I'm going to, these are the biggest cheat in the world. These are seedless lemons. I love them. And just squeeze them right in. You don't have to worry about anything. So I added a little lemon. I'm just going to coat them with some olive oil. I'm also, how did this end up over here? I'm going to add some salt. And we're just going to let those sit in that lemon and oil while everything else gets ready. And the tomatoes are just good to go as they are. Good to go as they are. Any minute now, I'm going to hear a ding and my crust is going to be ready. So I need to start working on my eggplant. So all you really do is scoop out the eggplant and just scoop it all out. It's all going to be nice and cooked and malleable. Scoop it right out into the bowl. Don't put the skin in there. We don't want the skin. We just want the eggplant, and we want that nice juicy eggplant liquor that's in there too. Okay. Not the skin, no skin. All the inner goodness of the eggplant is here. You're just gonna mash it all up. You can leave it a little chunky. It doesn't have to be, totally smooth. Seeing all those little seeds and all that stuff right there. That is the eggplant caviar, and that is all there is to it. So, very fancy name for that, for roasted eggplant. There it is. I've been watching my onions. My onions did brown a little bit, but that's okay. It's not like they're totally brown. And now we're waiting on the crust, and then we will assemble. Okay, so I pulled the crust out of the oven. It did shrink a little more than I anticipated. So instead of, I don't think I'll even have to use the little round, the little collar for the springform pan. I'm just going to do it right here, right on top of the shell. That was Annie getting a little worried. Someone's going to get some eggplant and she's not going to get it. So that's what that was. Okay, so there's my layer of onions. Now I need to do the layer of eggplant. So we want it to be nice, cover the outside, but we also want to get a little bit of height. Luckily, the eggplant's holding together very well. So I'm just going to decorate it very carefully. Very, very carefully. And try to get that eggplant, like the onions, sort of right to the edge of the crust. So sometimes you have an idea. It doesn't quite work out the way that you thought. But you know what you do? You just keep going on. You just keep going on. That's what happens. You drop that turkey at Thanksgiving, what do? You brush it off. You hope nobody saw, and you take it out to the table. I didn't drop anything. It just didn't work out as planned. But actually, it's working out. Looks fine. Looks good. Looks very good. So I've got my layer of onions. I have my layer of eggplant caviar. Now we come to the decorative part. So let's get it sort of nice, and we want it nice and flat, right? We want it to sort of be the same size all the way around. And you don't want the eggplant to overhang the crust. Even though the minute you cut it, it's gonna be a a big mess, but you are gonna want that presentation moment when you take it out and everything's beautiful and everybody says, "Oh, it's beautiful." Okay, now we come to decorating our tart. So what we did was sort of layer the zucchini and tomato, taking turns with each. My zucchini seems to be a little small. You can kind of double it up if you want. Some pieces are smaller than others. It is it is a zucchini. And now we're just going to ring the tart, almost like making a lattice crust on a pie. You want the color, but we also want the flavor of the zucchini and the tomato. And we're just going to keep ringing it all the way around. Coming to the end, I'm going to stick a little tomato. Both the dogs are right here looking at me like, hey, hey, what you got up there? I think they would be a little disappointed to get the zucchini. Okay, so now we're gonna decorate the center. So I am gonna try to find sort of bigger slices of zucchini, as similar a tomato slice as I can get. Smaller, smaller, please, smaller, please. There we go. Bigger, please. Small tomato. That's a small tomato. Now we've got a zucchini. Now we need one more small tomato. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Oh, look at that. All right, so what we did was we sort of lifted up one end just so there was like a little bit of a rose kind of effect. So you can do that as well, right towards the center. Lovely. Oh, that's great. That's great. That's great. That's great. Now, we also want to take our green oil. Oop, that's a fork. That's not going to help me. Get a spoon. And we're going to try and drizzle a little of the green oil right on top because you're also going to get a little bit of that basil flavor, right? So we're going to swirl it right on top. You can even swirl the plate so it looks nice and artsy, right? Very fun. Very, very fun. Now, she also took some of the little crackers that we made, and you can take the crackers and you can stick them up like little soldiers. Ooh, that looks like a good one. Oh yeah, that's a good one. If you want to stick them in the center, you can definitely do that. And you can also crumble some. Voila. Now I'm just going to take one little cracker, crumble it on the top. Oh, wow. How festive is that? That is pretty gorgeous. So, it's a lot of steps. I totally get it. But it's delicious. And it's going to look so beautiful any table that you set it down on. And the crackers are just kind of a big bonus, right? So make a little salad, have a piece of tart, have a salad, have a glass of wine, have a Dr. Pepper, whatever your preference, and enjoy the Provencal tart. My gift to you from Paris. Thank you, Chef Elise. Hi, Mom. I'll make this for you one day. And go to my website, almost-martha.com, where I'll put out all the steps that I did here today. And I hope you try and make it. I'll even put their recipe up, which is slightly different from how we made it. So you can follow that as well. So almostmartha.com. Thanks for joining. I'm really going to remember that day in Paris now as I sit down and have this tart and a little bit of salad and maybe put on some French bistro music. All right. Bye, everybody. See you next time. Bye, Mom.